Good evening. Tonight is a boom or bust in the high frontier. We're going to look at some of the conflicting signals we're getting. Are they really conflicting? And while we're on the topic, how big is the space economy? Well, Michael found us a great infographic to look at. It's going to be really fascinating. And the Japanese government just recently plowed over a billion and a half yen into a small sat launch company, which raises the question: should government be in the business of picking winners? And we'll leave with a comment about Jared Isaacman. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, this is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is the Unknown Quantity. Good evening, and once again, and welcome to another podcast of the Unknown Quantity. This is brought to you by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, of course. Now, what is the center? Well, we champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable SMBs, space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. One of our latest initiatives, of course, is our monthly space micro grants, where we award $1,000 with no strings attached every month to an aspiring startup. Now, if you want to apply, the form is going to be made available here on our page really soon. It's very easy to submit. We also encourage our listeners and fans to help support micro grants. Near the bottom of that web page is a link button to our support page, where you get the option of a one-time gift or a monthly subscription. $50 a month for 6 months or more, by the way, helps a lot of new firms get out of the garage. Thanks in advance. Now, joining me is one of my favorite podcast producers, entrepreneur, one of my oldest space friends, Michael Lane from Liftport. Michael, get in here, man. How you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I am reasonably well.
Reasonably well. Good.
I had a bit of a weekend, but I'm okay. I've survived. What was that line? An old line from a Star Trek movie. Scotty said something like, "Well, I had a wee bout, but the doctor pulled me through." Shore leave. Yeah, I had a little bit of shore leave last couple of days. But I'm good to go now. And we do have a few really interesting things. I like to, in this show, we try to find there's space news all over the place. There's all sorts of newsy things, but we pick out these tidbits and we think, hey, this looks like kind of vaguely important, and maybe we should talk about it in a little more depth. Yep. And that's really what we do here, and we have a great darn time doing it, if I may say so myself. So let's start out. So is it boom or bust in the space economy? There's an article in Space News last week that talked about that. I don't know if we can get that up there, but
right now.
But it was interesting. It seemed to be the division seems to be in new venture-led startups versus standard operational things that have been going on for a long time. They seem to be on a steady growth track, just satellite stuff, and ground support for satellite stuff and things of that nature in the larger space economy. But the venture thing is going all up and down and sideways because they're not sure, mostly because of new government policies that may be coming in, what is actually going to happen. And so that usually happens with venture investors and even angels in some cases. When a new administration takes over and there's any uncertainty at all, they'll all pull their horns in and kind of wait and see.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Since the election and then since the inauguration, I've been watching a lot of the news, and it's kind of going back and forth, right? That there's talk about 100 billion new defense dollars. There's been talk about 200 billion new defense dollars. We're going to talk about it later, but there's 20 billion that's been allocated specifically for the Iron Dome. Now that bill hasn't passed yet, but that's $20 billion for the Iron Dome alone, out of which maybe 100 million is going to go. Maybe $1 billion is going to be specifically in space. So there's a lot of mixed signals in this industry right now. And like, if Blue Origin downsizing, good couple of good friends of mine just got their notices a couple days ago. NASA's downsizing, whether they want it or not. Boeing is. There's definitely some uncertainty.
But we know why Boeing is downsizing. We've had that conversation.
We have, yeah. Exactly.
The thing is, with Blue Origin, this is not the first time something like this has happened in multiple industries. A lot of times, what happens is they spend a lot of money and they hire all these people to do all their R&D. And once they get the R&D largely completed, and they're going into production mode, that's usually when the downsizing starts. You don't need so big an R&D space anymore. So people who can't get rotated into the production side of things usually are left to find other opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot. So this is nothing new here, but we don't see it in this subsector of our industry very much. We haven't seen it yet.
Right.
And we've been talking about, for 20 years, we've been talking about this. Sooner or later, this industry is going to be the same as a lot of others, where they're going to be, downsizings and upsizings and mergers and acquisitions. And hey, how about this for a concept? Exits. Ooh, all the humanity.
Actually making money from your business, that would be fun.
Oh my God. Yeah.
There's a lot you can do with a couple $100 million in revenue, right? The whole world changes a little bit if you got $100 million in revenue, and some of these companies have it.
And well, depending on the size of the company and what the company's actually doing, you can get an exit. You could sell. You might be able to market that for 10 times revenue.
Yeah,
that's much.
It's going to be. I don't maybe buy into the boomer bust that there's only one direction it can go. I definitely wouldn't want to be Boeing these days. I think it's not bad if you're Blue Origin or SpaceX, right? Yeah. So I think it really depends on where you stand to see where you think things are going. The idea, I've lost the section, but it's a six. There we go. $620 billion market. That's what the space economy is now.
Yeah, well, we're going to see a big picture of that here pretty soon.
Yeah,
but I just noticed that as you're flashing by, driving the uncertainty again is more in the public sector than it is, and their contractors than it is in. To say just plain vanilla communications and satellite operations, which have has a steady growth and supposedly has a CAGR of about 3.5 to 3.9 over the next decade. And so, but the other side of it, the little more risky side of it, its growth projection is about less than half that right now, and even that has a lot of uncertainty, as we saw there, because you got a new administration coming in. All of a sudden now Artemis and SLS are under scrutiny, and a lot of people are going on again, off again about that, and back and forth. We talked about the need for Gateway last time.
Yeah.
So these conversations are going to continue, and we don't know what's going to happen when Doge finally hits our favorite government agency. So
they are out in force with their whether it's a chainsaw or a wrecking ball, depending on who you are talking to.
Yeah.
It's
and then it's already happening, because we just scrolled past this thing. I guess JPL is laying off a bunch of people, many of whom were directly part of the Mars sample return mission.
Yep.
Okay, and we have a question. our good friend Sam Caniglio is with us. He's joining
Hey,
us.
Sam.
Well, I guess we're live after all.
Yes, well, I actually did figure that out. Sam had asked where we were, where we are
Yes,
broadcasting, and so I was able to kind of point him to the.
you did. I saw that. Yeah.
Yep.
And Morty's popping in.
Yep. Hey.
Our big fans.
Yep.
Hey guys.
Thanks.
But yeah, we talked about SPACs. I don't know, about a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Basically, they didn't do so well. I think was our general consensus.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second and just kind of go to that for a sec. So I went on record in 2020, maybe 2021, thinking this is a terrible idea. Like, this does not make sense to me at all. And by the way, Tom and I talked about this a tiny bit a couple days ago. We have both been investment advisors. I had my Series 6 and 63. I did not have my Series 7. Tom had his 7. So we have that background. Super important to note that what we're about to say is not investment advice. Okay. My license has been expired for more than 30 years. Tom, when was how long have you been?
Oh, it's been about the same, maybe 35.
Yeah. So
the end of the 80s, early 90s, I was doing that stuff.
Right.
For trading birds, I don't think birds even exist anymore.
For me, it was the Dow Jones hit 3,000 and my firm threw a party. So I think that was 1991 or 1992.
Yeah.
We threw a party because we couldn't imagine. So that's how long our licenses have lapsed. So this is not investment advice. This is just kind of awareness. But our friend, so in 2020 and 2021, I'm like, this seems like a terrible idea. And then 20 companies in the space sector went public, and we're like, well, maybe I'm wrong about this. And then everything started failing. And Olson and I were talking to Michael Mealing, our friend over at Starbridge Capital, as a professional investment advisor with, if Tom is my oldest space friend, Mealing is my second oldest. And he said something that was kind of profound to me. He said the SPAC companies were the ones that went to the public markets because the savvy private investors would not back them. So they went to the people who didn't know. They just bought the story, but didn't know how to kick the tires. The general knowledge investors, that's who they went to. And honestly, So Sam, that is what happened. It was called a roll-up strategy, and that's a pretty well-known way of doing things. 2 or 3 or 4 companies get bought together and become a SPAC, and that's what happened with Redwire. In Redwire's case, they bought really strong companies, so Redwire was able to kind of maneuver through that. Mm-hmm. In Momentus's case, they had real challenges, and they are still experiencing real challenges. Spire, little known fact, Spire was one of the companies that went through the Center for Space Commerce and Finance's business plan competition.
They were one of our guys. Yeah,
they won second place. They didn't win. Got invited, connected to Hoyt Davidson, and the rest is history. But so some of these companies are pretty strong. Some of them are pretty weak. So I wouldn't want to lump everybody into the same category. Tom, if you want to talk about the next topic, I'm going to dig a little further. I actually have an article that I'll post to Sam about SPACs. So
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to mention on the topic of the SPACs, though, while we're here, is
Mhm.
that a lot of SPACs in general were kind of victims of the rules that were imposed on them, and a lot of which had to do with the amount of funding they could bring in, and there was a time limit. So it's like a year and a half or something. You didn't have a lot of time, 2 years, to get fully funded the way they wanted to be, or the whole thing would go away. They had to give it back. So that created a lot of problems as well if you didn't fill it up fast enough.
yeah. Yeah, there were some pretty interesting things here. I'm gonna share this. This wasn't kind of stuff I was planning to do today, but let me just
Okay,
let me quick share this. Give me 90
sure.
seconds.
And while you're doing that, I'll just say, like, bottom line on this first topic, basically, if you're in boom or bust mode, depends on whether you're doing just plain vanilla operations that's just static for the economy, or are you doing some high risk stuff and you're trying to get government contracts, or you've got some other thing you're trying to do, and the uncertainty is all over the place because no one knows what the policy is going to be.
Mhm.
And so that's where the conflicting signals come in.
Yeah.
Because other more plain vanilla aspects of this industry now, and we can actually say that in a $650 billion industry, there are actually plain vanilla aspects to it now.
Yeah.
That stuff you can just expect year over year over year. And
You
and
can
so that
expect
part,
reporting. You can expect national coverage. This guy, I actually don't know his name. I used to know his name. Yep, it's not in here. This person has been running coverage on the space industry for about a year and a half. So this newsletter comes out every week, and he takes a look at who's doing what, and what's strong, what's not strong, charts. He has a pretty solid evaluation of who's doing what. So there's a lot more to this story, but this is a good source. You would think I'd be able to. Let's see if I can point you where this goes. Let me just. Nope, that's not it. You would think I'd be able to just put a link in here so you could sign up for this newsletter, but apparently I cannot. Here's one that says forward. Let me just. Nope. It's like, here, fill this out.
for Lord's sake. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would think I'd be able to just hand you a link so you could follow this yourself, but apparently I cannot. So the Space Investor, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So I would go there, Sam. I would go there. They really do a good job. All right.
Okay. He's got it. It's good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Right. Good.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All right.
I don't know what question is about Virgin Galactic, but we do. But in contrast, we do have something, because we talked about this will be part of our next slide that we're going to see.
Sure.
You're talking about all the launches that have been done, of all the material that's out there.
Right.
Who's producing most of that? Michael?
Gosh, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this, but let's look at the charts. Let's look at the numbers here. So Bryce, and you saw them in the article a moment ago, talking, the first article that we posted. Bryce is one of the go-to sources for information in this industry. They do a great job, and oh, look, what a surprise. SpaceX goes up there with 40 launches. This is just in the last quarter of the year. Just the last quarter of the year. So if you got 90 days, they did 40 launches. They did a launch every 2.25 days or so.
Yeah, something like that.
Which is actually a little misleading, because they did some launches within hours of each other, within hours. So that's awesome. We talked on our show last week, a week and a half ago, about how there's congestion at the spaceports in the world, and that there's a limit. There's a limit to the congestion. There is starting to cause real problems, and I don't know if there's anything that can fix that. Right.
As we said at the time that the trend line right now for launches is vertical.
Yeah.
And a lot of the new spaceports that were being built out
horizontal
are horizontal, and no one's doing that right now, or at least not much. You know, Virgin has their launch site, and that's you know, and that's that. Everybody else is vertical.
Virgin Galactic was actually having some problems paying their lease. There's talk about them not keeping their lease. Yeah, Sam is like, it's amazing to have congestion. You're damn right it is, sir. Hey, this is a graphic I want to point out. I just, this boggles me, right? So total spacecraft, and then total tonnage. This is 540,000 kilograms of mass by one company. Nobody's surprised by the company. What I do like to point out is I added up all the others: second place, third place, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. I added everybody else up together. It's 105,000 kilograms. SpaceX is 5 times bigger than all the world combined. 5 times bigger than all the world combined. So that continues to astound me. And this is not putting, whoops, I got the arrow on the wrong spot. This is not counting the new Starship, right? Starship hasn't, commercially flown anything. So when that comes online, I don't know whether that's Q1 or probably Q2, maybe Q3 of this year. This number, this 600,000 number, this 540,000 number jumps. It jumps. Doubles, triples. I don't know what it's going to do, but sometime in Q2 or 3, we're going to see this chart, and it's going to be even bigger. So what's currently 5 times bigger than the world combined is about to double. So, that is astounding. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this chart. What kills me is that Europe has one launch. All of Europe is equal to Iran. All of Europe is half of India. All of Europe is half of Japan. That should scare everybody. That is a problem. That is a problem for Europe. We're going to talk. We talked a little bit about spaceports. There are some new spaceports coming online. The UK is investing very heavily in that. Some other places in the Middle East, no spaceports in the European launch probably launched out of French Guiana. I actually
look. Yeah, it was out of Kourou, because wasn't that the check ride for the new Ariane 6?
Yeah, there you go. Yep, exactly.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So
but Iran did that. So I mean,
this is a problem for the world, right? Like it's great for us, but this is going to become a problem. And we talked about Starbridge, and we talked about we didn't talk about Space Fund, but everybody knows that we're friends with those two as well, with those folks as well. Those folks are not going to be investing in launch companies anymore. Like, they've made it policy to not do that. But one thing that probably will happen, and we talked a little bit about Japan a moment ago, is that nation states are going to develop their own launch capacity for national security reasons. So this map will probably expand. China has four different, one, two, I think one of these is also China. Three, I think land space is number 4. So China has 4 different organizations, on this chart. And we should probably expect that India is going to have their own stuff, not just ISRO, but there's some funded space companies in India already in development. So this map is going to expand, but it's going to take a while, right? Yeah. All right. Anything else on that, Tom?
Well, no, just to close it out, we can close it out. I mean, that's a great graphic.
Mm-hmm.
We want to move quickly to the next graphic, because we've been talking about the size of the space economy, and we found this incredible visual that, even someone who's totally innumerate can kind of see how big this is getting. And it's going to be my new favorite website. I'm going to have to go to more often. It's called visualcapitalist.com. They're I love this stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good graphic. Give me a second on it. It just tells a good story. There it is. Yeah, I've been getting stuff from Visual Capitalist for quite a while. They definitely they hardly ever talk about the space sector, by the way. So don't, if that's what you're aiming for, sorry, it's not going to be
right.
A lot of the ads. Let me close out some of the ads that are just in the way. But yeah, I kind of love this graphic. So.
But this is the part, and this is where you visually kind of see where the potential booms and busts are.
Mm-hmm.
Because under here you see the actual space market. A big chunk of that is satellite services and manufacturing.
Yeah,
I could look at that again.
Yep.
And launch services and support services. That's what we're talking about. That's going to keep just growing at a nice steady pace. It's the other stuff where that's more R&D and capital intensive to get into, that's suffering the whims of policy changes at this point. And it's very clear to look at.
Yeah. I find this a little bit interesting because we just saw one chart that said $620 billion. Okay, this one says 596. So they're off by $20 billion. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. I like this. I like that we're going to grow to $1 trillion in just a few years, right? That is very exciting to me. Digging into this a little bit, they talk about launch is just a portion of it. I actually suspected this number was going to be larger. Like we just saw the chart a minute ago. Mm-hmm. Global launches. The United States, mostly SpaceX, was 44. There was slightly less than 70 launches total. And so $22 billion divided into that. That's not as big as I thought it was, right?
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
could be it's lower somewhat because the launch costs are getting lower. Thank you, Elon.
Yeah,
We can get more weight up there for less money.
Right.
Don't
I
forget
think
that
everybody
part.
on the call knew that we had about 260 launches worldwide. This is an attempt every 34 hours. Like that puts it in perspective. Like this is a normalized thing now. Yeah.
Yeah, we remember when it was 34 days.
Yeah. And we were like, man, that's a really hot pace, man. That's blistering 34 days. How long did it take to turn the space shuttle around? Not trying to knock my friends at NASA.
Weeks.
It's more fun now.
It was never the 2-week turnaround that they promised.
No.
When it was just a bunch of PowerPoint slides or the equivalent.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah, we do need to build a lot of infrastructure, Sam. A lot of that, again, is going to be a part of what the policy decisions are. And who's
my gosh. How clever was that of a segue?
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't that amazing?
See, we just have this stuff. We can just pull it up. Look at this. And
yes.
The internet somehow keeps up with us.
Yeah. All right. So look, I used to have a public relations agent that worked for me, and she was like, well, either you write your story or someone else will.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You write your press release or somebody else is going to write your story about you, and you don't have any control over shaping that. Well, so I think we're in the same boat with space, right? Like everybody knows that space is hard, but who is going to be building the infrastructure? And at the end of the day, the infrastructure is the backbone that we build everything else off of. So this stuff is really important in building out the policy of this. We're just at almost 50 organizations have signed the Artemis Accords. I think it's hovering at 49 or 48, something very close to that. So that's, call it 50 different views of going to the moon. China has their International Lunar Program. I think that has 12 views of going to the moon. We don't all agree on this, right? And then there's talk about this National Space Council either changing focus or being cut. So the space policy coming out of America doesn't have maybe the direction that we want it to have, which, by the way, leads back to the uncertainty that we talked about at the beginning of this.
Right. There's always been some kind of uncertainty somewhere. When you look back at history, I mean, back in the early 90s or thereabouts, when the internet was just getting started, that was another great example of how technology was getting out there way ahead of policy.
Way ahead.
Way
ahead. Wild West, we called it.
It was, and what fun we had. And if you could hack some code and build a simple web page, you could write your ticket. And a lot of people did. A lot of companies were funded based on basically a back of the envelope abstract of a business model. They were raising millions. These young kids. Where we may be on the verge of doing stuff like that today, because here's what's going to happen: that we're not getting ahead. I mean, space infrastructure, policy needs to get ahead of that. I don't know how they're going to do it, but the news there is basically because you're building hardware instead of digits. It's a little there's a little extra effort you got to put into that. You got to wait if you're going to spend the money to build that hardware. Okay. Where's it going? Who's using it? What good is it going to do wherever it's going, and who's paying for it?
Yeah.
Digits, it's a whole lot easier sell.
Right.
like
Yeah.
100 times easier sell.
Well,
So that part still comes back to haunt us. That's the old Space Cynic can be coming out,
yep.
and but it's still there. It's still there the way it was in 2007 when we started that. And so those questions are still out there, and they're still germane to the argument. And I don't think there's enough conversation being done about that right now.
Well, getting this stuff wrong means people are going to die. Like the stakes are different.
Yeah.
We didn't have Uber for 30 years after the first .com days, right? So the stakes were not as high then, 25 years. If Twitter went down, people were going to be irritated, but it wasn't life or death. Getting position navigation and timing wrong, getting comms wrong, is going to kill people.
Yep.
So
not even in space, right here on the ground.
Right here on the ground. Yeah.
With self-driving cars.
Yeah, it's going to be that's going to get bumpy, and I don't think we pay enough attention to the policy side of it. International Space University has been pretty instrumental in some of this stuff and has been really active for a long time. George Washington University in Washington, D.C., McGill University in Canada, in Montreal, and Leiden in the Netherlands. And I would also argue Michelle Hanlon's program down in Ole Miss. Those probably 4 places are, and then ISU in France. Those 5, I would argue, are the most significant in this sector. I know that I've just pissed off a lot of people from a lot of different schools. But I would say that those 4 or 5 are definitely in the vanguard. But it's hard. This stuff is moving really fast. So
yeah. But Dubois, poor Sam, he keeps peppering us with questions. We're not helping him out there. But he's talking on the infrastructure thing. It is a chicken and egg. You want to get people out there to justify the infrastructure. But it's not. But build it and they will come has never been a good business model for anything, especially in space. Never mind Earth, and there's enough failures there. The ground is littered with them. So that's going to be an interesting question. My gut instinct says, you've got to find a reason to get the people out there, and the infrastructure is going to kind of follow, and they'll be building it along the way. I mean, this is because back in the covered wagon days, we had ancestors who crossed the prairie in these wagons that they built, but then they, when they got where they were going, they built their own infrastructure at the other end, but they had the tools and they had the resources to build it with. It's going to be a little different out in the high frontier. That's an extra dimension of complexity that you're going to have to add because it's a harsh environment that will kill you every second. And so it's going to be, some stuff will have to be sent out ahead, but a lot of stuff they're going to have to figure out a way to do on the fly and use local resources somehow. My money, so if you want to spend money, my money's on space-enabled 3D printers. It's going to be, because we're already, I mean, the Chinese already have 3D printers that build houses now.
Yep.
And so
does Houston.
Kind of a way that, you could do that on the moon with a little extra tinkering.
The guy that just pioneered that just got laid off from Blue Origin last week. No joke. That's Monty.
Wow.
I'll go find some links about that in a second. Sam is saying that his latest post is about infrastructure. Sam, put your link in there. We'll take a look at it. I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to go to it right now, but I'll take a look at it. Put the link in there. 3D printing is going to be critical infrastructure out there. And one of the space architects in Blue Origin's sphere, I don't know, workforce, that's the right word, workforce, was one of the people that just got laid off. So it's not just China that's able to build whole houses. Folks in Houston.
I just use that as an example. I'm sure there's a lot of copycats out there now and making improvements and doing better. And that's going to be part of how we probably build a lot of things out in the high frontier, using that kind of capability and other new things that we haven't even figured out yet. But here's well, we'll get to that. I want to cover out. Well, we only have 20 minutes left. Look how the time goes when we're talking about this stuff. We just get on here. When we don't, see, this is what Michael and I do. When we don't have a guest, we just start ranting at each other about stuff. And we find interesting shit, and we put it out there. Says, look at that. What do you think of this? This is cool, or this is horrible. And so that's kind of how we roll. And it's kind of fun. We got 20 minutes left. I still got 2 more things to cover.
Yeah,
I can do the one really quick. Let's go to Japan.
Let me just do a quick here's the guy from LinkedIn. And I'm going to show you let's see where the page is. All right. So, here's the guy. And then if you go to his website, award after award after award after award.
And he's now seeking new employment.
Yeah. So that's where I met him more than 10 years ago. This is him building this is their construction. They built this as a Martian home. Look at this thing by like shape, right? Like that with him as it's pretty remarkable. This kid's pretty badass. I'm gonna talk to him. I actually got his call schedule with him next week, so I'll let you know how that goes. And maybe he's not kind of the guy we would normally have on this show, because he's not a funder or a founder, but he has founded some things and he has received some pretty good sized checks. He's pulled in more than $500,000 in NASA contracts for his research. I think it's here. 100,000, $500,000. Yeah, so 700, maybe a quarter, maybe $750,000 in awards. So this guy's a solid badass. All right. Sorry, you wanted to talk about Japan.
Yeah, just a very quick thing. I can keep it short. It's only a minor thing. As you can see, the Japanese government, I don't know what 144 billion yen is. I don't know. Is that, like a few $1 million or something?
Yeah.
But they're supporting this launch company, this small sat launch company called Interstellar Technologies. Now, it doesn't seem like anything new in the real world, because as you saw, the Japan didn't have many launches last year from that previous slide, and they would like to have more. They think, and apparently, small sat launch capability and demand has gone up 20 times just in the last couple of years. And they're going, okay, we need to get in there and have some players in there. And which I understand, they have their own equivalent of an SBIR, and they gave them a bunch of money from that to do it. I guess my question comes, I have a question just for this country as in terms of general policy. Is it a good thing for a government, no matter what industry you're in, especially this one, to try to pick winners with taxpayer money? Because the American experience has been absolutely dismal in that, going back 200 years or more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to raise that question and see what everybody thought about it. Because we've been doing this going back to the days of when we were building the Erie Canal. The federal government put money into building the Erie Canal, but then they made the mistake of hanging on to the Erie Canal and still funding it, even after the railroads had already taken over and taken all the traffic.
Yep.
And this keeps happening. Amtrak is still running. They had they were subsidizing all sorts of railroad traffic while they were building the interstates. It's just it just never ends with them on that. They and now now the Japanese government wants to do it. Well, maybe they're better at picking winners than we are. Maybe somebody at SoftBank to help them.
And this is exactly what we were talking about a moment ago, right? Japan has 2 launches last quarter, but Japan has a national interest in having their own launch capacity.
Yep.
I'm just gonna pop this on the screen for a millisecond here.
Sure.
Oman is building their own spaceport. Honestly, that one was a surprise to me.
But which came first on that one, the chicken or the egg? The PLD was signing the firm. Did they get the signature before they agreed to build a spaceport, or did they build it and PLD came?
Yeah,
I don't
know. I actually looked for more information and I really didn't have it. So I have an ISU classmate that runs a satellite company in Oman, and I actually looked to see if he was involved with this. I couldn't find anything. There's not a lot of information, at least not in a language I can read. So going back to Japan for a second, yes, it really isn't in the government's best interest to quote unquote pick winners, but at the same time, they have a national security requirement to have homegrown space access. So there's this conflict of how do you get what you want? How do you get what you want? How do you get what you need for national security?
It's a policy choice that's always been a horrible one for the United States. I hope it works out for them.
I looked it up, by the way.
For us, Solyndra,
Solyndra, right?
My God, and that's just one.
Yeah, that's just one. What? By the way, 1.4 billion won is equal to, yen is equal to about $1 million US.
Okay,
so that's not going to get them very far. They're not going to build an interstellar actual technology on $1 million, but good for them for getting in the game.
Yep. So they're getting in the game. We'll see how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to raise that question because I see this a lot, and we have a horrible history of it. And I say, please, Japan, learn from our mistakes, and I hope you do. And God bless you.
Good luck.
Absolutely. Well, a couple of things. Rant of the day is basically Jared Isaacman. There's a big thing. There's a big article in the Wall Street Journal today about Jared Isaacman, and he says, "Oh, thrill-seeking billionaire and SpaceX astronaut poised to run NASA." And according to some people who've read it, it was one of the most out-of-touch articles you could ever read on this topic. I bring it up because I got it from our dear friend of the show, Rick Tomlinson, had a great post on that in LinkedIn today, and he said, and I'm quoting him, he calls it a ridiculous, hypocritical title. Isaacman is a pioneer. If NASA does the same, it's called exploration. But even the Wall Street Journal doesn't get it. Jared is what the agency needs right now. The 9th floor at NASA, get this, the 9th floor at NASA has become a hall of mirrors illuminated by gas lights. It's time for a transformation. It's time to let Americans do what they do best, supported by a government that believes in them and does what it does best. So I thought that was just a very, very great comment. And I can only follow it up by, look, I don't know what committee is supposed to approve Jared Isaacman, but for the love of God, just please get it done. We'll have and the thread of this show is, what about some certainty in the industry? We'll have a lot more certainty once he gets in and gets in up to his elbows and gets his feet wet and really starts working on things. We'll have some certainty pretty darn quick when that happens. Right now, we have a couple of placeholders that are in there just keeping the lights on and the machines running until, everybody's waiting for him. So whatever committee you are that's doing this, please get your due diligence done, get this over with, so the markets will thank you for that. And on that topic, in addition to that topic, you sent me a link, and I remember reading it the other day too, from Ars Technica, where Elon Musk is recommending that the ISS be deorbited sooner, like 2027 instead of 2030. Right. I know a whole bunch of people who would applaud that a lot. And one guy, a good friend of mine, and you know him too, I'm not going to mention his name. He works for a certain company, is in the business of now building private commercial space stations. But he was the one who told me that, he is just jumping up and down with the idea that, the ISS has to go. You can't do anything with it. You can't put it out in a parking orbit and charge, tourists to go there. It needs to go, or nothing else is truly ever going to get built by the commercial sector unless this thing goes. That's his argument. I'm not saying it's mine,
it's somebody who's actually in the industry, been sweating over this problem for actual decades, not figurative decades,
right?
And well respected in the industry, right? I'm going to counter that though with one important caveat.
Okay,
there cannot be a gap between having Americans in space or not having Americans in space. That right. I find that absolutely 100% unacceptable. So I'm all for shifting to the private folks, the commercial companies. Love them, whether it's Axiom or Max or Vast or Gravitics or Blue Origin's Reef, like Gateway, Voyager's Gateway. There's six commercial space companies in development right now. And that's just the ones that have $100 million or more in the checking account. There's about a dozen more smaller ones that are way smaller, way tinier. But these six all have north of $100 million in the checking account of verifiable contracts. It's one of the things where that phrase, you can do a lot if you have if you have a couple $100 million in revenue, not investor money, revenue, cash flow, contract. Right. So that would be my big argument. I'm
all in with you on the gap thing, because we didn't mind the gap very well when it came to the shuttle.
No,
that's the shuttle in 2011, and the first Crew Dragon with a crew on it didn't launch until 2020.
Right.
Yeah, we can't have that again.
Point to the audience. Tom and I were there when the first cargo module connected with the ISS. We were at a ISDC event. I think it was Washington DC, although I'm not sure of the location. It was
in 2012.
And the NASA administrator was there and walked us through. So we're all for that. We're all for commercialization, but we cannot have a gap. That's my big argument there. Okay. This article, not messing around, not really pulling any punches either, by the way. Not pulling a lot of punches there. All right, sir, we have about 5 minutes left. Anything else you want to, let's see if there's I'm going to bring up the Iron Dome link just for a moment.
That's an interesting thing, because you talked about where the money is going to be spent. Some of it will end up in our industry, so it's going to be I think for the most part it's going to be the usual suspects defense contracting, they're going to get most of that. Including, it may even be the usual suspects in the space contractor side of it too. I would imagine. This seems to be a military project of the developers, by the developers, and for the developers. The big ones. And and so, okay.
They're not going to risk this with a startup, no matter what a darling startup it might be. Like I might like Anduril and some of the other defense space startups, but this is a for Boeing, by Boeing. This is for Lockheed.
Yep.
There's going to be an element of it that goes to space.
That'll be ULA.
They're not messing with. Yeah, this is a ULA.
You'll get that one.
So, this definitely. I want to call it a pork project, but I don't think that it is, and so I'm a little conflicted with this one. Now this is important to note. Like, this has not turned into a bill that's been passed, so we don't really know what's going to happen. There's a lot of ground sensors as core to this. I remember working with Dr. Jordan Kerr, 2005, maybe?
Something like that. Yeah, I remember him.
And he was one of the original people. Star Wars. Sam, a lot of folks that called it Star Wars were the ones that did not like it because Star Wars came out in 1977. Yeah, it
was called the Strategic Defense Initiative.
Right. Yeah. And so Dr. Kerr worked on the Strategic Defense Initiative with a bunch of other people. It was definitely a wild ride, but with what's happened in Israel lately, it was kind of inevitable for the Iron Dome of America to reappear. So we'll see how this plays out. But as we started this show with a lot of uncertainty, boomer bust in the space industry, this is just one of those elements. Brilliant Pebbles was a pretty interesting one too. All right, and with that, I'm gonna sign off.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom, as always. Terrific.
Always lovely to have these conversations. Let's see. So when's our next show again? We're going to be. Is it still the 11th?
This is a big deal. Yeah. We're starting twice a week. Get that? Twice a week. So this is super exciting.
Tuesdays
for that.
And Thursdays. I think you said. Absolutely.
Yep.
You're going to see my visage 4 times more than you do already. Can the universe handle this?
For sure.
Well, we're going to find out. And the level of snark is certainly going to go up significantly. I've been officially given permission to do that. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Yeah. And we're going to be doing 2 shows a week from now on, and which means me like 300 more guests for the rest of the year. And so,
and by the way, thanks Morty and Sam. We love having y'all on here. Thanks for being so interactive with us this evening. I'm going to sign off. Tom, it's over to you, and we'll see you. We'll see you in the week and a half. All right. Bye-bye.
Yep, absolutely. On our next show, we're gonna have, I hope, Marcelo Bolt. He's a young man who works with the Space Generation Advisory Council. We got some big plans for their Space Generation Congress coming up in Sydney this fall, and you're gonna hear a lot from him about what we're doing to work together. It includes our microgrant program, which you can still donate to if you click the link at the top of the page. And from the Center for Space Commerce and Finance News Desk, I am Thomas Andrew Olson telling you, keep watching the skies.